If you're reading this, it's already too late for me. These may be my final moments, and I have to write this down, hoping someone, anyone, finds it. It's my fault. I should have never let her back in. I know what she is now, and I know she's coming for me. My story is a warning, a plea scrawled in terror. It all started 6 months ago, when I was the luckiest man alive. Annie. My Annie. She was the love of my life. After 5 beautiful years, we finally got married. I can still see her, standing in the sunlight, radiant. Life was perfect. Then, I landed a new engineering job in Colorado. It was a dream come true, a new start, a grand adventure for us to share. We packed up our life in New Hampshire, full of hope for the future. We were loading the last box when old Mr. Abernathy from next door came over. He heard our route and his face just fell. He pulled me aside and warned me about a particular stretch of road in Utah, a shortcut the locals called Uncanny Valley. I'll never forget the look in his eyes. He gripped my arm, his knuckles white, and said, "Don't go down that road, son, no matter what. And if you're foolish enough to ignore me, whatever you do, do not get out of the car." I chuckled and dismissed it as a local superstition. I wish I had listened. The drive was beautiful at first, just miles of open road. But deep in the Utah wilderness, hours from anywhere, Annie had to use the restroom, badly. The next rest stop was over an hour away, but the GPS showed a shortcut that would save us 40 minutes. Uncanny Valley Road. Against my better judgment, against the cold feeling in my gut, I turned the wheel. The moment our tires hit the dirt, the world changed. The upbeat song on the radio dissolved into a harsh, crackling static. A thick, unnatural fog rolled in, clinging to the ground like a shroud. The trees were all wrong, impossibly tall and gaunt, their branches drooping like skeletal fingers. And the silence, a heavy, pressing silence. No birds, no cicadas, not even the rustle of a squirrel. Just the low hum of the engine and the crunch of gravel as the road stretched on and on and on. Annie couldn't wait any longer. I pulled over. "I'll just be a second," she said, her voice tight with discomfort. "I'll go behind that big tree." I watched her walk away, her figure quickly swallowed by the dense, white haze. I waited. A minute passed. Then 2. The silence felt like a physical weight. "Annie," I called out. No answer, only the hiss of static from the radio. I cut the engine, and the silence that rushed in was absolute. "Annie!" I yelled, my voice cracking. Panic, cold and sharp, flooded my chest. I threw the door open and ran to where I last saw her. There was nothing, no footprints, no sign she was ever there. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. I called the police. My voice was a choked, pathetic thing over the phone. When they finally arrived, even they seemed unnerved by the place. The dogs couldn't find a scent. The officers' questions were rote, their expressions a mixture of pity and confusion. They searched for weeks, but Uncanny Valley gives up no secrets. It was as if Annie had stepped out of our world and into another. The official search was eventually called off. "People get lost in the wilderness all the time," the lead detective told me, his voice devoid of any real comfort. But this was different. I tried to form a search party in the nearest town, but the locals, they looked at me with fear. They refused to help. They spoke in hushed tones about the valley, about how some people who go in just don't come out. They weren't just unhelpful. They were terrified. They knew. They knew, and they let me drive right into it. I fell into a black hole of grief. I couldn't leave Colorado. This was meant to be our home, and leaving felt like a final betrayal. So I stayed, a ghost in a house filled with the ghosts of a future that would never be. 6 weeks. 6 weeks of silence, of staring at her picture, of my heart physically aching with a pain so profound I thought it would kill me. I was coming home from work, another day of just going through the motions, when I heard it. A noise. A faint scratching sound from the basement. My heart stopped. My first thought was a rat. My second was something worse. With my hand shaking, I opened the basement door and stepped into the darkness. And that's when I saw her. Huddled in the corner, shrouded in shadows. A wave of relief so powerful it brought me to my knees, washed over me. "Annie," I whispered. She looked up, and it was her. It was my Annie. I rushed to her, tears streaming down my face, babbling her name over and over. I held her, but she felt still, cold. When I pulled away, she just looked at me, her face pale in the dim light. "Don't tell anyone I'm back," she said, her voice a flat, empty whisper. "Please. No police. No family. I just want to be home. I'm fine now." I was so lost in my joy, so desperate to believe it, that I agreed to everything. I didn't question it. All that mattered was that she was here. But as I helped her up the stairs, as the light from the kitchen fell on her face, I saw it. Her smile was too long, stretched into a grin that didn't reach her eyes. And her eyes, they were sunken, dark voids. The woman I was holding, the woman who looked like my wife. She wasn't just fine. She was terrifyingly, fundamentally wrong. I tried to rebuild our life, piece by broken piece. I treated her like a convalescent, someone recovering from a long illness. Every morning, I'd make breakfast, talking about the weather, about my job, anything to fill the oppressive silence she brought into our room. "It's a beautiful day, Annie," I'd say, my voice straining to sound cheerful. "Maybe we can sit on the porch later." She would just sit there, smiling that long, stretched smile, her eyes fixed on something I couldn't see. The food would grow cold. I'd throw it away when she wasn't looking, telling myself her appetite would return. I read to her from her favorite books, the words feeling like ash in my mouth. I was desperate for a flicker, a sign that the woman I loved was still in there. All I got was that same vacant stare. Her trauma was a fortress, and I couldn't find a way in. I had to believe she was still in there. The alternative was unthinkable. The nights were when my faith was truly tested. It started with a creak. I woke up, my heart pounding. I told myself it was just the house, but then I saw her. A shape, standing in the corner of our bedroom, still as a statue. I couldn't breathe. My mind was screaming, but I was paralyzed. I don't know how long I lay there before I found the strength to lunge for the lamp. The light came on, and the corner was empty. I spun back, and she was in bed, lying on her side, facing away from me, as if she'd been there all night. "A night terror," I gasped, my voice a ragged whisper. "It's the stress." The next day I spent hours online, reading about PTSD, about fugue states and sleepwalking. I clung to those diagnoses like a holy text. It was the only thing that made sense. It was the only thing that allowed me to keep going, to keep trying. But the fear was a cancer. I stopped sleeping. I'd lie next to her, my body rigid, listening for the slightest sound. I started setting little traps, things only I would notice. A book left on the floor at a certain angle. A door left open just a crack. In the morning, they were always untouched, which somehow scared me even more. It was too clean, too perfect. The paranoia was eating me alive. I knew I was losing my mind, caught between what I could see and what I was desperate to believe. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know. I would pretend to be asleep and watch. I lay there, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs, forcing my breathing to be slow and even. Then, it happened. She rose from the bed without a sound, a fluid, unnatural motion that wasn't human. She glided to the corner and stood there, a silent sentinel in the dark. And she turned her head, and I knew she was staring right at me, right through my closed eyelids, with that terrible, endless smile. My hope, my desperate, foolish hope, it didn't just crack, it shattered. The thing in the corner wasn't my wife, and it knew I was awake. My feigned sleep had become a nightly crucifixion. I would lie there, paralyzed by a terror so profound it felt like my heart had stopped, and I would watch her. The game had changed. She was no longer content to be a passive horror in the corner. She was advancing. Each night a new position. One night, I woke to find her standing at the foot of the bed, a dark sentinel guarding my nightmares. The next, she was closer, standing by the bookshelf. Her silence was the most terrifying part. There was no breathing, no shifting of weight. Just a flawless, motionless statue that moved only when I was pretending not to see. Hope had curdled into a primal need to survive the night. I wasn't allowing her to scare me any longer. It was the glint of moonlight on steel that finally broke me. I woke up not with a jolt, but with a cold, suffocating certainty that I was being watched from inches away. I opened my eyes, and she was there, leaning over me. Her face was a pale mask in the darkness, that smile a gash. And in her hand, held loosely, casually, was the chef's knife from the kitchen block. The paralysis vanished, incinerated by a white-hot surge of rage. It was the rage of a man with nothing left to lose. I screamed, a raw animal sound, and threw myself from the bed, scrambling backwards like a crab until I hit the wall. The lamp went down with a crash. In the strobing, dying light, I found my voice. "What happened to you?" I shrieked, pointing at her, my whole body shaking. "What's wrong, Annie? What?" She tilted her head. The smile didn't waver. It was just a shape on her face. Then, in a voice I had never heard before, flat, empty, utterly devoid of life or emotion, it spoke. "You don't want to know." And in that moment, I knew she was telling the truth. I fled. I ran to my office and barricaded the door, my mind a screaming chaos. The sun was beginning to rise, but my world had never been darker. I threw open my laptop, my fingers flying across the keys. No more searches for amnesia or PTSD. I typed in the name of the road. The place where it all began. The legends. The folklore. And I found them. Buried in the digital dust of the internet. Story after story, spanning decades. A man by the name of Thomas Edwards disappeared in '82, returned a month later, and then his family vanished. But that's not all. The neighbors said they would catch him just staring out the window at night, looking directly at their house as if he could see through the darkness. They tried warning the wife, but she would not listen. She was just glad he was home. Then, one night they reportedly heard terrible screaming coming from the house, so they called police. By the time they showed up, the house was a bloodbath, but there were no bodies. Over the next few months, passersby swore they saw the family out alongside that road, but police chalked it up to he say, she say. Then, a woman, Edna Stevens, in 65, same story. But her family was found in their home, with no signs of violence, just dead. The pattern was undeniable. A person goes missing. They return, but they're not right. And then their family pays the price. The most popular theory is that somewhere just between reality and the other side lies a place called the Uncanny Valley. Nobody knows exactly what it is, just that no man, woman, or anything living should go there, and if they do, it's not them that's coming back. I stared at the screen, the words blurring together. This can't be true. Surely they would have figured something out by now, I told myself, but Annie? Something. Everything about her just wasn't right. I just couldn't put my finger on it. Just this morning I caught her stirring her tea. I swear I sat there for almost half an hour just to see when she'd stop. I called her name and I swear her neck almost turned 180 degrees to face me before the rest of her body followed suit. I didn't know what to make of all, it's just that it wasn't normal. My phone vibrated, a violent buzz in the tomb-like silence of my office. It was Detective Miller. I didn't answer. I couldn't risk it hearing me. He texted a moment later. Call me. Urgent. The need to know, to talk to someone from the outside world, was a physical ache. Fearing my voice would carry, I made a decision. The basement? Thick concrete walls. I crept down the stairs, each step a gamble. I pulled the heavy door shut behind me, sealing myself in the damp, musty dark with a single bare bulb. I called him back, my voice a ragged whisper. He was calm, professional. He told me there was a development. He told me they had found a body on a remote logging trail off Route 26. He told me the dental records were a match. He told me my wife was dead. He told me she had been for weeks. The words didn't make sense. My mind refused them. Annie was upstairs. I could hear her, couldn't I? The floorboards creaking. But Miller's voice was so certain, so full of pity. And in that moment, as the detective asked me to come to the station, the floor fell out of my world. She was dead. My Annie was really gone. The thing in my house was a monster, a parasite, a thing of pure horror wearing her face. As that awful, final truth crashed down on me, the light bulb overhead flickered, and with a pop, it died. The line went dead. I was in total darkness, a cold, suffocating black. And then I heard it. The slow, deliberate creak of the basement door opening at the top of the stairs. I scrambled for the far wall, for the window, for any escape, but it was already moving. Honey, aren't we a little too old for hide and seek? Called a voice. That was seemingly trying to mock a sound that used to take all of my problems away now. It was the source of every problem I have currently. I'll count to 3, it said 1. 3, now bellowing from somewhere terrible. It flowed through the darkness, silent. I felt a searing, blinding pain in my shoulder, and I fell, screaming. It was on top of me, its weight crushing, that dead smile filling my vision as it raised the knife. I closed my eyes, and then lit. A flashlight beam, so bright it was holy, and the sound of the door crashing open. Police, get off him. 2 gunshots, like thunderclaps, from God himself, and the weight was gone. Detective Miller saved me. He was there, a solid, real presence in the nightmare. He was applying pressure to my shoulder, his voice cutting through my pain. I was on my way when you called, had a bad feeling, he said. He got me out of that house, out of that tomb, and into the passenger seat of his car. The relief, the sheer, bone-deep gratitude, it was overwhelming. I was alive. It was over. Leaning against the window, bleeding, crying, I looked over at him. You saved my life, I choked out. Thank you. He just nodded, focusing on the road. Just doing my job, son, he said, and he gave me a reassuring smile. I see it reflecting in the rearview mirror, and my soul turned to ice. It was a kind smile, but it's too wide. It stretched just a millimeter too far at the corners, and his eyes, they're calm and reassuring, but they were sunken just a little too deep. It's uncanny,